Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Was in Tokyo Revengers and Time Traveler movie. Before we start, please go support Franklin Jr. LeBron for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Naruto is Takemichi's brother, and is a quiet and very shy boy. Although he is still super fast physically, he is also considerably strong and has a more animalistic drive. He is very protective of Takemichi, while also being very attached to him, and also greatly limits himself in all areas. This Naruto will undergo drastic changes in different futures, and each future may have a separate plot from Takemichi. He will be the bridge that leads us to that scenario, and Naruto will be the shining star. Prologue. We find ourselves on a bus stopped at a red light, albeit suddenly. Seemingly desperate, a boy with long white hair tied in a ponytail, glasses, and a school uniform quickly ran out. The boy named Naruto Hanagaki was apparently desperate, and the reason was simple. One of his classmates was watching underground fights of Japan's dominant gang, Toman. The problem, though, wasn't that, but rather, apparently in a rather foolish way. His younger brother, Takemi, ended up in the middle of this fight, which he could certainly say wouldn't end well. So, like a good brother, he didn't think twice and ran to his brother's school to help him, even though he hoped he'd make it in time. He really cursed his luck because he saw the live stream just as they had already left, and he had to stop at a stoplight to get out of the car. Because you always take. The desperate white-haired man undid the top buttons of his shirt for more comfort while putting away his glasses and placing his backpack on one shoulder, although because he was concentrating on putting on the backpack he was almost hit by a taxi. Even with blurred vision due to lack of glasses, I managed to jump over the moving taxi while running non-stop. Excuse me. He screamed at the top of his lungs as he dashed away, continuing to run, dodging the crowds who were apparently eager to crowd his path today. Don't die, Takemichi. Hang in there a bit. He whispered worriedly. He still had several blocks left that really, if he didn't take a shortcut, it would take him minutes to get there. Seeing his opportunity in the distance, he entered the alley he hoped would be a shortcut. And while it apparently was, it was also a maze marking him. But when he reached what was the end, he only saw a wall that made him frown. But again, without stopping, the boy with an athletic body placed his hands on the wall, and then pushed off with his speed and ended up jumping cleanly. Although she felt a tremor in her body due to the height as she fell, she continued on her way. She finally finished when, leaving the alley, she found in the distance the large school where her brother had told her a few months ago he was studying. Naruto, thank God. Entering the school, he evaded security, who was just a fat man with a cane, and ran off to where the whole battle should be, which was the backyard. Although upon arriving he stopped to see the scene. On the ground was a physically battered blonde boy in school clothes, his younger brother. Holding his head as if it were an object, another blonde boy was standing there, but this one had long hair and a small bow on his forehead, along with a black cape on his shoulders. This one was Sano Manjiro, better known as Invincible Mikey. Next to the blonde man with a bun was what I could tell was his friend. A very tall boy with blonde hair, possibly around 1.80 or 85 meters tall. His head was shaved, and he had a long ponytail at the end along with a tattoo of an apparent black dragon on the left side of his head. This boy's name was Kenryaguchi, or better known as Draken. They beat him and even humiliate him. The white-haired man clenched his fist, annoyed. How dare they do that to his brother? How dare they do that to their brother again? Do people really need blood to understand that they shouldn't harm those they love? If so, show it to them. Naruto heard a simple whisper that caused his brow to frown, and shot off in an instant. Draken barely heard the loud stomp Naruto caused when he was thrown, but when he tried to see the reason for the loud noise, he felt a sharp pain in his left arm. When in an instant Naruto gave a strong blow to the biggest one in an instant, to then finish with outside of the blonde dwarf Mikey, who could barely react to a kick from the white-haired boy, blocking it. Being pulled away from the boy he was talking to, Mikey looked up with a frown at Naruto, who looked just as seriously at his enemy. As if on command, Naruto launched a strong kick at the boy who barely blocked it, when he instantly returned the blow with another kick, placing his hand on the side of his head, Naruto blocked the strong kick. Although this left both of them surprised. He blocked me. They both looked at each other more seriously again. But before anything could happen, Naruto started speaking. First you hit him and then you humiliate him, you're a... The boy cut himself off as he clenched his fists, while behind him a confused Takemichi looked confused at the battle between his brother and the person who helped him, whom he happened to want to meet. Naruto, I think you're misinterpreting this. They didn't hit me. Naruto looked at his brother doubtfully. Really? Takemichi nodded decisively. They were even the ones who helped me in this battle against Kayamaza, he said, trying to calm the whole situation down, or he would lose the opportunity to meet the invincible Mikey. Naruto looked at this, and at that moment, to the surprise of some, he looked down blushing. I am sorry, he said, now embarrassed, while his embarrassment was noticeable on his cheeks since apparently the Parisa had just changed from that aggressive boy to a very embarrassed one. And she showed that with a bow. I'm sorry for attacking you when you only helped my little brother, I'm truly sorry, she said with a bow, then dropped the bow and looked at the blonde, whose face was still serious. Clear, he replied, his serious face turning into a calm look. Michi's acquaintances are my acquaintances. Besides, Draken would do the same for me, so he forgives you too. The giant boy, who towered over the white-haired boy by up to 16 centimeters, got up from the ground in great pain, holding his injured arm. Yeah, whatever you say, Mikey, he said in pain. And this apparently embarrassed Naruto again, who looked away nervously. I'm sorry again, Draken-san. It's just that I saw a video of people in their cloaks attacking Takemichi. The big guy nodded. I understand, brat. Kayamaza was causing too much trouble for us too, he said calmly, ignoring the pain in his arm. Naruto, WL, if everything is okay, can I take Takemichi? I asked nervously. While confused, the blonde duo watched as Naruto easily picked up their brother and placed him on his shoulders, while all of Kayamaza's subordinates watched attentively. He's strange. Mikey looked at his friend and smiled. I like Kenshin. We should pair him with our Gans. He hits really hard and is really fast, he said cheerfully, while the older boy rolled his eyes. Whatever you want, Mikey. The big man sighed, turning around. Maybe going to a doctor to see if he broke his arm now would be a good idea. And Kenshin, we should go visit Michi. I love him as my friend. Draken nodded, sighing, wondering what was coming next with his friend. Yes, Mikey, we'll go with Takemichi later. Meanwhile, Naruto had Takemichi in the school infirmary, while a doctor treated you if you fell all smashed from the blows. That's annoying, Hanagaki. If you keep this up, you'll be expelled from school forever, not for a week like normal. The blonde nodded embarrassedly while Naruto, with a nervous smile, listened to the fact that this apparently wasn't the first time this had happened to his brother. Because he didn't tell me about this? Don't you trust me? He's not interested in you. Naruto sighed as he remembered what caused Takemichi to leave his parents' home over 2 years ago. When he was 12, that is. Brother, he really went down a path he shouldn't have been on. Getting into fights with delinquents at 14 shouldn't be something a boy does. Naruto, hey Taken, why haven't you answered my messages for a few months? I was worried again, he said, looking at his brother, who became nervous. My screen broke, so I had to buy another one, and I couldn't remember your number. She spoke nervously, receiving a sympathetic look from her older brother. So, Naruto, what are you doing here? I thought you were still in Kyoto with Mom and Dad. Naruto shook his head with a smile. No, I've been studying at a school in Tokyo for a month, closer to the Shibuya district, south of here. I wrote to you a while ago to meet up, but you haven't responded. Takemichi nodded as the nurse finished closing the small wound. Okay, we're done, she said, applying a bandage. And you're Hanagaki's brother here? Naruto nodded at the nurse doubtfully. Yes, why? Tell your parents this kid isn't on the right track. He and his friends are getting into fights to gain fame from those motorcycle clubs and such, so educate the kid well or he'll go to juvenile detention. Naruto nodded sheepishly at the woman's words. Thanks for the information, miss, he said, nodding calmly. With that, the nurse looked at Takemichi, who became nervous under his teacher's threatening glare. Be more like him and stop that delinquent stuff, otherwise the next time you need a hospital, it won't be for wound treatment. Takemichi nodded scared, and already seeing that all his work was finished. The nurse left the brats inside, while in calm silence Naruto smiled at Takemichi. You shouldn't do that, Take-chan. It's not good for you or anyone else, he said, smiling kindly, more than anyone would think he would on such a serious subject. Embarrassed by his sister's behavior, Takemichi just nodded. Although yes, he has real plans to stop being a criminal. Perhaps he ignored the warning before because he was a rebel. But now he does have a motivation to enter this world and, above all, meet Mikey, save them all. You idiot, you really think you can do something? What happens happens, and it will happen again, in different ways, but it will happen. Naruto smiled at his brother. Just take it seriously, please. I don't want to see you hurt again, he said, putting on his glasses. When his vision returned, he looked at his brother clearly with a kind and pure smile. Stroking his brother's head, Naruto picked up his backpack to leave. I have to go, I left my school bus before leaving for the expedition. That'll probably cost me a few points, laughing nervously. Naruto tried to open the infirmary door, but before he could, someone else opened it, letting in a girl Naruto hadn't seen in a while. Huh! Naruto-san? Naruto looked at a pink-haired girl with a mole on her lower lip who was wearing this school's uniform. Hey, Tachibana-san. Long time no see. The girl, now known as Tachibana Hina, better known as Hina, smiled at her boyfriend's brother's actions. You don't have to always call me Tachibana, Naruto-san. Just calling me Hina is enough, she said, smiling calmly. Naruto nodded while smiling. Sure, hi. The girl laughed tenderly at the elder Hanagaki's embarrassment. Don't worry, just call me Tachibana if it makes it easier. Naruto nodded at this. Fine, Tachibana-san. I have to go, but I hope you'll help Takemichi while I'm gone, he said, smiling kindly, as the girl reciprocated and left the intersection for the older white-haired man to leave. Leaving school, Naruto walked calmly through the streets of Japan. That brat doesn't know what he's doing. He'll only make things worse for you and him. Naruto smiled calmly as he continued on his way. And with the sound of teeth clicking, the Hanagaki arrived at the stop where he had left the school bus, which, as he hoped, wasn't there. I think so, they're going to lower my points a lot. With a smile, Naruto walked calmly towards his school, which, when he arrived, would possibly be in his last hours of class. Some time later. And he wasn't wrong, because when he arrived, several students were on their way out, while the others in the classrooms were ready to do the same. Hanagaki-san. Naruto turned around when he heard a girl scream behind him, and when he turned around Naruto looked at the girl the boy knew. Hanami-san. Naruto looked nervously at a black-haired girl apparently older than him, this being his classmate Hanami Kyoko, a first-year high school girl being a 17-year-old girl with black hair and a ponytail and almost golden yellow eyes. Kyoka, Hanagaki, do you even know what you caused by running off the bus like that? The trip was cancelled because you were the one in charge of leading the excursion, she said angrily while crossing her arms. Naruto was embarrassed for forgetting his responsibility. I am so sorry, Hanami-san. Seeing the boy's embarrassment and nervousness, the girl sighed. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying, don't try to get into every school event. Because if you have a setback like today, the school won't know what to do. Don't make it your responsibility, he said, crossing his arms calmly. Naruto nodded at that and apologized again. I didn't mean to. My brother was just in trouble. But it won't happen again, I assure you. The girl smiled slightly. You didn't get the message, but that's okay. You're just too good not to help in any way you can. With that, the girl held her backpack tighter and left the classroom, leaving Naruto smiling as everyone around him started to leave the school. But instead of leaving with the school, Naruto went deeper into the classroom. More precisely, to the gym, where the janitor let him continue calmly without asking him anything. Upon opening the door, Naruto saw an empty volleyball court in the center. Entering without asking, she quickly changed into something worthy of the sport, and got ready just as a few young men entered the court, wearing the same volleyball uniform. You see, Tanaka, I told you Hanagaki won't be missing even if he left suddenly. The bald boy named Tanaka nodded, arms crossed. Don't say Hinata, I just wanted a day off, he whispered, annoyed at why he had to be training even on a Friday, although he really wanted to win these semifinals, and there was no one better to coach him than Hanagaki. Naruto smiled at his teammates. You better stretch for training, we're 10 minutes late today, he said with a smile, and the team nodded, ready for today's training. Chapter 1. Takemichi could be seen climbing some stairs where, above, almost all the neighbors of the apartment complex were waiting above to see the fireworks that would be launched today. The boy watched his girlfriend Hina beautifully watch the fireworks explode. Wanting to enhance the occasion, he surreptitiously tried to take her hand, though her tiny size confused him. But when he looked to his side, his eyes widened in surprise. It's a beautiful night, isn't it? Takemichi watched as he held the hand of Naoto Tachibana, Hinata's younger brother, but before he could say anything, a flash of light completely covered his vision, and he remembered something. Remember, Takemichi, the handshake begins the journey through time. Opening his eyes, Takemichi quickly got up from the hospital bed when a dark-haired boy looked at him from a distance and approached. Takemichi, are you finally back? Takemichi, now 26, looked with crocodile tears at the man who should have been Naoto Tachibana, but 12 years in the future. Why did you have to show up at that moment? I was going to take his hand, but you got in the way. Naoto, now an adult, looked at his friend in confusion. What are you talking about? Holding my hand? Stop that. If you came back, it's because something important happened, right? What have you changed? Black-haired Takemichi made a nervous face. Something important, right? You accidentally took my hand. Naoto's scream echoed throughout the apartment, while Takemichi nervously tried to explain everything. Well, you were the one who broke into the place. I wanted Hina's ambi. Naoto rubbed his forehead, annoyed. You know what? Leave it like that. What do you have for me? Takemichi was confused. Didn't you understand what I said? I came back by accident. I didn't do anything relevant to come back. Well, I met Mikey. Naoto was confused for a second. Mikey? Are you talking about healthy? He asked, and Takemichi nodded. Well, leave it. That doesn't matter. I need you to know something I discovered. If you really came back today, then technically you've only traveled back exactly 12 years. He said, turning to a board where there were two arrows pointing opposite each other, one saying future and the other past. If you spend 12 days here and travel to the future, you'll return 12 days after you leave, and the same goes in reverse. And apparently the only thing that travels is your mind, since your body remains in a state of suspension. Takemichi nodded at that, which technically means he lasted more than a week in a coma or fake death. Hey Naoto, do you have any way to contact Mikey? I knew him well in the past, and I may have managed to talk to him. The policeman looked at his friend. Really? You're talking about being his friend and all that? He asked, frowning. And at Takemichi's nod, he frowned. If that's so, why didn't you kill him when you could have? You had my sister's killer close enough, and you didn't do what you should have done. Takemichi was startled by his friend's sudden slam on the blackboard. Hey, Mikey used to be a delinquent, but he's a good guy, really. That. Takemichi stopped in his tracks. You murdered my sister, my goodness! Are you brainwashed or something, Takemichi? The Toman is a mafia of murderous criminals. Takemichi, I know, but since it all happened, I can tell you that they're not bad, at least not in the past. He said seriously when Naoto angrily looked at Takemichi. Sigh. Naoto, what do you want? Takemichi smiled. Find Mikey. With him, we'll be able to find out what happened for everything to end like this, he said decisively. Naoto nodded, still annoyed, knowing in advance that everything would end badly. Abes Takemichi. Since you came back, I've noticed you're not so sensitive anymore. Something happened that made you a little tougher, he said, giving a smile that surprised the black-haired Hanagaki. Really? So you think I'm cool? Tell me, I'm cool. Naoto got a tick on his head as he sat down at his desk to search for useful information. Come on, tell me, okay? Tell me. Naoto, you get confident too quickly, huh? Takemichi smiled at this, pulling another tick at Naoto. Mikey and Toman, be cautious. They're probably using untraceable cell phones or using a fake name and identity. Takemichi stood next to him to see if anything looked familiar or if he could help find Mikey. The last thing anyone saw of Toman besides the altercation was a glimpse of Otsutsuki 2 years ago as a high-ranking officer of Toman. Takemichi's eyes widened in disbelief. I hope, Otsutsuki Sendo, you're talking about Awaken? Naoto looked at his classmate doubtfully. Your friend from high school? He asked, interested. Takemichi, yes. Naoto nodded. As far as I remember, in the original story, he was in prison for a crime from 12 years ago. Stabbing Kayamaza, but apparently since that didn't happen here, he became a member of Toman. Of course. That makes perfect sense. If he didn't stab Kayamaza, he never went to jail. And since I knew Mikey, he joined Toman at some point. He always wanted to be a notorious criminal, after all. Naoto's eyebrow twitched. Why in the past did everyone want to be a criminal? Sighing, I look at my partner in the mission to rescue Hina and ask. You can contact him. He's our only bridge to Mikey, so he'd be helpful. Takemichi nodded. Yes, as long as he hasn't changed his number. Although we'll need to go to my apartment. He spoke a little nervously at the last bit. And Naoto, who already knew he was coming, rolled his eyes because he knew it wouldn't do him much good in Takemichi's room, if his lifestyle was any indication. Elsewhere/later. A dark-haired man with a snake-like tattoo on his neck could be seen, his hair in a ponytail, 2 strands falling on each side of his very toned face. The man, possibly 28 years old, was also wearing a black shirt and a jacket of a different color. And tell me, what do I have to do? The grown man asked calmly on the phone while sitting on a multi-$1,000 sofa in his house, which was super expensive like all mansions valued at more than $10 million. The voice on the phone decided to speak. It'll be easy this time. The man was confused. He almost never did easy jobs because he usually earned millions regardless of what he did, something his clients didn't like, but didn't agree with either. You're telling me you'll pay me millions for a job of importance? I didn't know you were so generous, Kisaki. Tell me, did a girl finally say yes to that ugly face of yours? The man now recognized as Kisaki or Kisaki Teta let his anger known with a low, but audible, growl from the dark-haired man. You should be careful with your words, Hanagaki. You're only still alive and in contact with me because of the usefulness of your skills and knowledge, he said, smiling. Though that smile fell at the contempt her words showed for the now revealed 28-year-old Naruto Hanagaki. Yes, I'm good at what I do. I provide you with information to stay ahead of the curve, blah blah blah. We know that, but I insist, why give me millions to do this menial job? Don't you have lackeys who can do something so simple? I think you're confusing my words, Hanagaki. I said it's easy, not unimportant. This is very important for Toman, since one of the higher-ups has been very suspicious lately. He didn't do the only job I asked him to do properly, and he seems more worried every day. Naruto nodded. One of the higher-ups, huh? Again, if he's one of your people, you could easily kill him, so why me? It's easy. Even though he's a well-known high-ranking member of Toman, he's still a civilian to everyone except the police. If he suddenly dies, not only will the police pay more attention to us, but civilians might start learning about every Toman executive. This, in short, will cost us millions and give us fewer places to move and fewer manpower. And not to mention that they could investigate him further when he's dead and find a whereabouts with us. Naruto nodded. Fine, I just hope it's easy. If he's a high-ranking officer, shouldn't he be surrounded by all his bodyguards? So will you send them away, or should I kill them all? Even though they're not very important, they're still useful, so kill the ones you can't. And make sure you're not associated with us in any way. Even if you must make yourself known, do it. The black-haired man nodded, getting up from his handmade sofa and his TV, which covered the entire wall. Yeah, whatever. And when do I have to do this? In 2 hours or so. And if you can, avoid witnesses. The last thing I need is for you to be recognized and have the police on your radar. Naruto, sure, I'll get ready and head out to kill your executive. See you later, tits. He said, smiling, before hanging up, before the Toman's second-in-command started yelling at him like crazy. The man was certainly annoying when he felt like it. Well, time to start a new day, or rather, a new night, he said, taking a cigarette and using his lighter to smoke it leisurely, as he headed towards some stairs in the grand mansion, disappearing from sight in a few minutes. Elsewhere, the adult Takemichi could be seen with his eyes bulging and his mouth wide open. Awaken, is all this due? Naruto looked at his partner with a tick for the exaggeration. It's just a vulture, it's not that big of a deal. Even when it looks more like $1 million mansion and the one-night stands look more like billionaire wives, it's still a vulture. Takemichi, if he has all this, he doesn't mean he's not the same anymore, right? I mean, Awaken. That idiot with the poopy hairstyle clearly won't stop being that good friend. Right. Takemichi bit his nails in worry about what his friend was doing at this moment. Meanwhile, a butler was approaching, wearing a suit that both of them could say was thousands of dollars more expensive than anything they had at home. The man approached and looked at them both, his eyes filled with contempt for their clothes and appearance. Can we help you with anything, gentlemen? He said with respect that seemed more like mockery or contempt, which only made Takemichi more uncomfortable. If the butler was better than Awaken, he could simply dismiss him as if it were nothing. Well, sir, we're here because Awaken invited me. Is he around? The man raised an eyebrow in doubt. Is Mr. Otsutsuki the undefeated here? At the nod, the man sighed. You too. He called to 2 bodyguards standing in the distance. Ask Mr. Otsutsuki Sendo if he's expecting a low-income man and a street man. After saying the last part, he looked at Takemichi, who got a little angry, but his nerves were greater. Waiting for an answer, everyone stood there, until one of the guards approached, nodded, and whispered something in the bodyguard's ear. Wait, really? Naruto narrowed his eyes in anticipation. If he had to draw his weapon at the last minute, he would be prepared. Well, I'm Mr. Hanagaki. Mr. Otsutsuki Sendo is waiting for you inside. Both of them went blank at the new words the butler had spoken. Are you making fun of me? Takemichi asked, his face blank, at Naruto, who shrugged. It doesn't really seem that way to me. They both put that aside to follow the butler and guard into an empty room, which made Naruto a little uncomfortable given the inappropriate place to escape and the number of doors. It was impossible to defend himself. Sitting at the bar end of the room, Naruto watched as Takemichi was given a super expensive tequila, and when Ivan came to pour it, he shook his head. I don't drink. Without protest, the butler left the bottle and glass on the table in case he changed his mind and decided to drink. Watching everyone leave the room, Naruto turned to look at Takemichi, warning him of any danger. But when he looked at his hand, he noticed it was shaking. Are you shaking? Takemichi gulped. He'll be the same, right? It's Awaken, it's Awaken, it's Awaken. It's Ak-dash. Before he could finish, a voice called out to him. Takemichi, behind you. Hearing the voice, the glass of alcohol fell from his hands as if on reflex. He then looked at a man about 27 years old sitting on the sofa. The man, who was Otsutsuki Sendo, no longer had the cap on his head. Instead, he was almost bald, with a worn face and many tattoos covering his arms and forearms, leaving him very different from his 12-year-old self. Otsutsuki, or more simply Awaken, smiled at his friend's surprised and doubtful face. You didn't recognize me without the bump, did you? A little confused, Takemichi shook his head. No, it's a little difficult, he said, scratching his head in confusion. He's very different from when I knew him, but his smile. He's clearly the same Awaken, he thought, smiling at seeing that his friend hadn't changed as he feared. How long no Takemichi? I was waiting for you. Takemichi and Naruto were confused by the last thing. But before we could talk, Awaken and I asked Takemichi, can we talk outside? And then looked at Naruto. Alone. Don't worry, nothing will happen. The black-haired man understood and nodded. Sure, I'll wait for you here, Takemichi. Tachibana said to take a seat, and nodding Takemichi left behind Aken, who took with him his 2 bodyguards who followed him everywhere. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Naruto could be seen on a super tall building, leisurely smoking a cigarette. He had a super long trunk next to him, which he leisurely opened, revealing a 22mm DLQ-33 sniper rifle with a range of 830 meters per second and a stability record of over 2.3 kilometers. Well, it's time to get ready. It must be time for you to stare into the cold night. Leaving his cigarette, the black-haired Hanagaki took the sniper rifle to put on the mount, ammunition, and silencer, which for him was the most important thing at that moment. Calling attention to yourself wouldn't be good. Okay, all set. Naruto smiled as he saw the weapon fully equipped with the best quality equipment for a silent assassination like this. With his weapon ready, Naruto prepared his foothold near the window, then settled down on the ground and looked through the sniper scope. There's the target, but there are 3 more nuisances. Kisaki said she'd barely be around this hour, so I chose her. The black-haired man snorted in annoyance. If one piece of information was incorrect, there was a chance that the whole thing could be. So it's easy for someone to do something to fail this mission. Using something as simple as the building where he's currently located not actually being empty at this time is a good example. Stopping his grumbling, he prepared to face his target. Here you are, Otsutsuki, a high-ranking member of the Tokyo Manji Mafia. With that said, the sights showed where Naruto was looking. It was precisely Aken's brothel building, where Takemichi, Aken, and the 2 security guards were currently. Naruto watched as his target, nicknamed Aken, spoke to a man with black hair who seemed familiar, but not familiar enough to catch his attention. Perhaps he was another member of Toman, since after his brother disappeared, leaving everyone behind by leaving, well, he had to join Toman so he wouldn't be killed. And although he'd say he didn't really like it at first, he later stopped seeing everything as good or bad and looked at it from what, in his twisted mind, was best. Money. If there was money on average, he'd be the best employee in all of Toman by a few million. And even though he could tell that thought was from a psychopath, he didn't care. He'd already had to kill so many people because of his cowardly brother that he simply no longer sees the bad, and only sees the good, which was precisely what he gained from that death. Although he did more than just kill, he also framed, deceived, and bribed. Naruto, you really don't plan on letting him go? He thought, hoping to fire a single shot and not kill both of them, since he wouldn't get paid for the other unknown boy. Waiting for him to let go, Naruto smiled when he finally had his victim alone, and without leaving any more he fired. Elsewhere, Takemichi could be seen talking to Aken, though the latter spoke in a way that seemed strange to Takemichi, as it seemed like a farewell. Something that confused him and terrified him a little subconsciously. Takemichi, before this is all over, I'd like to tell you, be careful with Kisa. Chapter 2. Takemichi could be seen on some stairs, while further away Naruto was talking to the officers to give the black-haired man a few minutes to calm down. But knowing this was necessary, he decided to speak. Naruto, don't worry, they need a witness, right? Hearing his friend's faint voice, Naruto told the officers to give them some time alone. And when they were left alone, the younger Tachibana approached his friend to help him. You shouldn't push yourself. Not everyone comes out unscathed from a shootout like that, he said while smiling calmly. Although he apparently didn't achieve much, since the boy's gaze remained dejected after seeing his friend's death in front of him and his near death from the shootout between the bodyguards and Aken's assassin sniper. This is Kisaki's fault. Naruto frowned at those words. He ordered Aken to be killed because he knew he'd talk to me, he knew I could time travel, and he decided to kill him. Naruto opened his eyes in surprise. Did Aken know you could do that? He asked, very surprised. He was probably the only one who knew. Takemichi never told anyone else, and he himself never mentioned it to anyone. Something like that, Aken seemed to suspect why you saved me. But one thing I'm sure of is that Kisaki is the culprit, he said angrily while clenching his fist. Naruto, yes, this is the 4th time a sniper has killed a high-ranking officer. We know who he is, but we never managed to catch him because we were late to the scene, he said, somewhat frustrated at failing to catch one of the few people who could take him to Kisaki and, therefore, to Mikey. Takemichi doubtfully raised his head to ask who it was, but suddenly a scream and gunshots were heard outside the alley where they were. And upon leaving, Naruto took his weapon in hand and together with Takemichi they went out to the street where the bodies of the two officers who were with them before were lying on the ground. And in front of them with a 9mm Taurus PT-92 was Naruto with the weapon smoking from the bullet exit, making it more than clear that he is the one to blame for the deaths of both officers. Lowering his weapon, Naruto considered retreating, but he had to move when he heard a whisper, and as he moved toward an alley, a gunshot rang out. "Thank you," he said to no one in particular, as he leaned out and began shooting at who he assumed was the last officer there. Although he had to stop shooting because of another whisper at his side, and immediately the bullets started raining down from the officer again. "You're good when you want to be, aren't you? Why all the help all of a sudden?" he asked the air as he switched weapons. He never went out without 2 mid-range weapons and a handgun. And without an answer to his question, he prepared himself, leaving the alley ready to shoot, but he noticed that neither the officer nor the other unknown subject were there. Walking slowly, Naruto headed with his weapon raised for any surprise. Although he didn't notice that as he passed an alley, Naruto stepped out and started walking behind him, ready to aim at the attacker. He didn't expect that, sweeping past him, Naruto knocked him to the ground and then knocked him out with a single punch, pinning him to the pavement. Smiling, Naruto looked at the alley where the second stranger was. "Did you really think such an old trick would work against the Red Death? You should reread your trick book," he said, and Takemichi, frightened by the look from the boy he didn't know, fell to the floor in fear. Those wide eyes are like Mikey's from that time," I whispered, seeing the murderous look I noticed Mikey had when he confronted his brother for his sudden attack. The stranger, who looked a little unfamiliar, retreated with a suitcase on his back that must have been the weapon he used to kill Awaken, leaving him lying next to the unconscious Naruto and, further away from them, the bodies of the 2 police officers from before. Later, at the hospital, Takemichi could be seen standing next to a pained Naruto, who had an ice pack on his head from hitting the pavement hard and then getting punched by the stranger. "Oh shit, that shit hurts." He whispered curses in every possible way because of the severe pain in his head. He almost never cursed. But this pain reverberated even in his ears, as if one side of his head was being drilled and the other hit with a hammer. "Hey, it's not that bad. Hina wouldn't like you cursing like that," he said, a little nervous about the boy's cursing. It was already the 8th curse he'd uttered, along with a prayer, since he woke up 5 minutes ago. "Who the hell was that? Why did he attack the officers and why did he have a gun?" Naruto said, ignoring Takemichi's previous remarks. Takemichi's sweat dropped at being ignored, but upon hearing the question, he remembered what the killer had said. It was called the Red Death, and he was probably stopped because of suspicion about the suitcase he had on his back. Takemichi said seriously, because the stranger was possibly the one who shot him and Awaken. "I can't see it because luckily, the only bullet that would have hit it went to the side and after that it stayed down so as not to be shot again." Although he still had to witness the death of Awaken's bodyguards, who were shot dead. Meanwhile, Naruto beside him opened his eyes in surprise. Although that caused a severe pain in his head that made him throw another curse into the air. "The Red Death! What would Naruto Uzumaki be doing here, and why would he kill Otsutsuki Sendo?" "Takemichi, what do I know, maybe Kisak." The black-haired man stopped dead in his tracks at that moment. "Wait, did you say Naruto from Naruto Uzumaki?" Naruto nodded, confused. "Yes, Naruto Uzumaki, also known as the Red Death, is, so to speak, the greatest bounty hunter ever seen. He kills like a pro and always uses 1 bullet per person. His movements are impossible to calculate since he kills in a patternless manner, and his work is too clean and calculated to be tracked," he said, dropping the ice pack because he felt better now, and the ice inside was already melting. "But you can tell by your reaction. Is he a friend from my past?" Takemichi fell silent at the question. "My full name is Takemichi Genya Hanagaki Uzumaki. Our second surname is after our father." At this revelation, Naruto opened his eyes wide, his face more than surprised to understand what she meant. Are you a brother of the Red Death? Takemichi nodded dejectedly. We're 3 brothers, Naruto and his twin, and then there's me. The least, he said, his face downcast and in shock. Even Naruto decayed in this future. What the hell happened these past 12 years? Naruto sighed. Was he different in the past, or in the first future in general? He asked hesitantly, seeing that Takemichi didn't seem to be doing too well. Well, in the past, he's very shy and embarrassed by everything. But in his first future, he was a great person, a multi-millionaire businessman who helped make the world as better as possible. Naruto nodded at the news. This must be my fault. I just met Toman. What if the same thing happened to him as to Awaken? He joined Toman and now works for them? I ask, but Naruto calms him down. The Red Death doesn't seem to be a member of the Toman. He does work, sometimes even acting within the same Toman or any other mafia. We police officers notice that everything he does is for money. He has no allies or enemies. Takemichi smiled at that. Knowing or thinking that it wasn't his fault his brother had become like this helped him. But that's just a theory. Takemichi was once again discouraged by his partner's words, but he knew he had to say them after all. Nothing was concrete, and giving him hope wasn't the best thing to do at the moment. Takemichi, Naruto, we have to change this. Awaken told me something about the past. Draken is going to die. He said seriously because he knew what it meant. Draken is Mikey's right-hand man. Without him Mikey would feel lost. So possibly if we save him, we can avoid all this. Naruto, Draken, were you talking about Ken Ryaguchi? I asked, and Takemichi nodded. Well, we can look into him. We might find something related to his death, or the date itself, he said, getting up to head home. Elsewhere, Naruto could be seen arriving at the apartment where he lived and taking down a fake ID that belonged to him. Mr. Uzumaki, you're late for the neighborhood meeting again. Hearing that voice, Naruto looked at an old woman he knew. Oh, Miss Miwako-san. I'm sorry about that. I just got a call from work right around that time. You know, jobs without schedules. The older woman sighed, knowing the boy wasn't being rude. Fine, but nothing's really changed. Except that now Mr. Takeda will be the meeting manager because Kansetsu-san resigned. Naruto heard both names and didn't recognize either one. He didn't interact with anyone inside the building because he knew they could recognize him if they made too much contact. I only trusted the lady because she seemed to forget things so quickly. Well, thanks for the update, but I have to sleep. I'd probably have another job in the early morning, he said, entering the building below the lady outside. Going up to his floor, which was number 30, the Uzumaki looked at his gigantic mansion, which was located in one of the largest buildings in all of Tokyo, managed and founded by himself under the pseudonym Namikaze Minato. He had several other buildings with that same name and also an actor to help him with the role, very well trained to pretend to be Minato, since he could not present himself for anything legal or could stay recognized by any past report. Sitting down, the Uzumaki took a cigarette and lit it with the lighter, letting out the puff of smoke calmly and speaking. I'm here, he said calmly, and upon hearing his voice, someone started down the stairs, revealing someone the Uzumaki had known for several years. Finally, I thought you were dead, said a brunette with long, curly hair tied in a ponytail. This was an adult Hanami Kyoko, Naruto's former friend and current partner. The black-haired woman who now seemed changed. I looked at the dark-haired man and smiled. How did it go? I asked, looking at my partner, who shrugged, not really giving the question any importance. Naruto, the Toman executive, died, but an acquaintance of his was there and came out alive, and when I was about to leave, some police officers interrupted everything and I had to kill them, he said calmly, letting smoke out of his mouth. At least you're alive, she said calmly, sitting next to her boyfriend and resting her head on his shoulder for both of their comforts. And tell me, why are you so serious? She asked, because the boy didn't seem to be the same as always, nor was he very different. But for her, who had been with him more like her girlfriend for 10 years, knowing when something was affecting him, regardless of how small the problem was, wasn't that difficult. I missed a shot. he said, looking at his hand angrily. I didn't know why, but when I was about to shoot the stranger, my hands acted on their own and deflected the bullet. It was as if something was controlling me. In that brief moment, I couldn't move the rifle to shoot properly. Kyoka, that's strange, and your demon has nothing to do with it? I asked with doubts. He didn't know if that thing about a shadow helping him was true, but he didn't doubt it either since the former Hanagaki, although crazy, didn't have a mind so broken as to imagine things. He says not to pay attention to it, it's something that had to happen, he said, frowning. When he accepted his dark impulse, he could see something that had him in doubt, but he didn't want to touch that power again, so he decided to leave the subject closed. He rarely used the demon gift when he was working and needed it, so he decided to let the doubt fade away with time. Do you want a drink? He asked with a smile to his girlfriend, who understood the proposal and smiled at him. Sure, I'll wait for you in bed, he said, smiling as he headed towards his room, leaving the Uzumaki to head to the kitchen to find some good wine to start his night, and looking at his hands, he left the subject deep in his mind. The less importance I give it, the easier it is to forget. Elsewhere. I found something. With the call, Takemichi got up from the sofa and looked at Naoto, who was sitting in front of the laptop he commonly used. Naoto, Ken Ryaguchi, former deputy commander of the Toman gang. He was killed on May 3rd in a confrontation between Mobius and Toman, apparently due to an internal conflict within the gang. Takemichi's eyes widened in surprise. An internal conflict? Why, and with whom? The conflict was between Manjiro Sano and Ken Ryaguchi. Chapter 3. Takemichi, what? What you just said is impossible. Draken understands Mikey better than anyone. There's no way those two are going to fight, he said, astonished by the revelation. He expected a high-ranking officer to use his division against Mikey. Not that Mikey and Draken would fight each other. So you're saying the past is wrong? Takemichi shook his head. No, but something's missing here. Something must be hidden in all of this, and we have to uncover it, he said, frowning, wondering what must have happened for everything to end this way. I've got it, he said, excited to know how to uncover something important. We just have to find witnesses from that day, and we'll be able to find out what happened that caused Draken to die. Naoto, it's not a bad idea, but Mobius joined Toman after losing, and we don't have anyone from Toman who can be trusted, so we have no witness, he said, frowning, although an idea came to his mind and he began to type on the keyboard. Watching Naoto's search in confusion, Takemichi was startled by his companion's shout of joy. I got him! You have what? I asked, looking over my shoulder at the laptop screen. The leader of Mobius at the time, Nobutaka Osanai, leader and commander of the 8th generation of Mobius from 1998. With that, Takemichi smiled, knowing where this would all lead. If we interrogate the leader, we'll know what will happen in the best possible way. Naoto nodded as he looked at the small report. He was released from prison 2 years ago for abusing a girl and beating her to death along with her boyfriend, as well as vandalizing a house and attacking the family. Due to his good behavior, his more than 20 years were reduced to 10 years. Takemichi's eyes widened as he heard who this man was. He doesn't look anything like the Toman criminals. These guys are more violent and apparently don't mind hitting a woman, unlike Mikey. Did he kill a girl? Naoto reread it a bit and shrugged. Something like that. Apparently, after or during the grape, they beat her and left her in the hospital, where she died some time later. 15 days to be exact, he said, and Takemichi nodded, frightened by what Mobius was or will be for his past self. That's terrifying. But they do see themselves capable of killing someone. They could have even killed Draken. Naoto, if that's the case, we need to find out more about what happened that day, he said as he stood up, knowing what they'll do. Before meeting Osanai in the present, you must look at the past and make sure what's happening these days, since the conflict doesn't happen overnight, he said, prompting Takemichi to extend his hand to Naoto. I want to know what would cause a fight between Draken and Mikey, and if I can fix it, he said, smiling determinedly. And Naoto nodded in response. If Mobius was just the trigger, that means they had some problem beforehand that led to all of this, he said, extending his hand as well. I'm counting on you, he said, causing them both to shake hands, and a flash of light clouded Takemichi's eyes, revealing that he was walking beside Hina. Thank you for walking me back from my private lessons. Takemichi was confused by this, and when he looked up at the sky, he saw that it was nighttime, just like when Naruto and he had first shaken hands. It's nothing, he responded, hiding his expression out of embarrassment, which earned Hina a strange look. Again? Hearing that, Takemichi's face went blank. Again? What do you mean? He said nervously, as Hina leaned closer to his face and then sighed. Did she realize it? He thought even more nervously, but what Hina said confused him. You've suddenly changed again. Now you're a mature Takemichi, when a while ago you were the cold and distant Takemichi, he said sadly, and Takemichi was surprised. It's true, my past self doesn't know anything about time travel, and I was cold to Hina? He thought doubtfully. But at that moment, without further ado, a blow fell on his cheek, sending him flying to the ground. Falling from the blow, Takemichi opened his mouth in protest, but saw it was his brother, which confused him. Ow! He screamed in pain from the hardest blow he'd ever felt in his life, his cheek burning. Huh! Naruto, what are you doing here? He asked, suddenly forgetting the blow upon seeing his brother in what he thought was Shinjuku. Huh! Takemichi, what are you doing here? Naruto asked, and seeing him lying down, he knew it was him who hit him. I'm sorry, the blow wasn't meant for you, he said, confusing the two young men because no one was around with the intention of hitting or fighting the boy. Honestly, the punch shouldn't have hit anyone, but I threw it out of anger. Hina, you shouldn't hit the air so carelessly, you might hit someone who isn't as tough as Takemichi, he said, depending on Hanagaki, who nodded embarrassedly. Why yes, I'm sorry, he said in an embarrassed chibi manner, while Takemichi stood up next to him and shook what he noticed was his school uniform. And what are you doing here, Naruto? I thought you lived west of Shibuya, Takemichi said, and Naruto and Hina looked at him. Taki and I were in the Shibuya district. More specifically, in the most populated commercial area. But how I'm here is somewhat strange, and I hardly remember anything, he said, scratching his head and recalling an event from a few minutes ago. It was strange to wake up so warmly? Really? What happened? The Tachibana asked doubtfully, causing Naruto to think for a moment. Well. Flash black. Naruto can be seen slowly opening his eyes. Already? He thought, noticing that she was back. It was too fast for me, I liked it. I whispered because it clearly seemed strange to him. He just returned, and it seemed as if he hadn't spent the same amount of time as he had back then. It's clear that I haven't spent the same amount of time. I don't have your brother's power. I have to get you across the line your brother left behind during his time there more slowly and safely, he said, and Naruto looked to his side. Dark, he said, looking at a shadow that had its eyes and mouth completely empty and with a sinister aura, being very chilling for everyone except Hanagaki, who had already seen its appearance more than 8 years ago due to a specific event. So Takemichi didn't come back with me? I asked, confused and filled with several questions. And above all, what happened to my body while I was gone? That's easy to explain. While I was gone, I created a personality in your subconscious to replace you. Although I wanted to make it just like you, I regretted it, so I made some last-minute changes to what you were supposed to look like. Saying that last thing, Naruto opened his eyes in surprise and stood up from what he noticed was a bed. What did you do? He said as he felt something move near him because of the scream. See for yourself, ha 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 ha. With that laugh, which annoyed Hanagaki to the point that his pupils turned red, the shadow vanished, vanishing as if it had never been there, leaving a very confused Naruto. Look around you! With that whisper, Naruto looked around and noticed several things that surprised him. 1. He was naked. 2. It wasn't his room. 3. It was a hotel of considerable pressure. 4. He had been drinking alcohol. If his mild and almost invisible symptoms of dizziness told him anything, along with the cans of drinks on the table. And the last but not least point, which was also the fusion of all points, was that he was naked, in a hotel bed, experiencing his drunken state, while a blonde girl slept peacefully next to him. Apparently, that girl was the one who caused the movement earlier, and she was just as naked as him. Naruto collected all the points and blushed. I did that with this stranger. How the hell did this happen? What did that idiot do? If Mom finds out, she'll kill me. Oh my god, what do I do? Did they even know each other before doing this? He promised her something? They became a couple? How long was I gone? While the white-haired man had his internal war over what his body did while he was away, the blonde girl next to him began to get up little by little, while opening her very tired eyes. And highlighting the boy, the girl placed her head on the shoulder of the guy she'd been with all night. Are you up yet? We just finished 10 minutes ago. Naruto blushed at the confirmation of what they had done. Who are you? I mean, can I know your name? He asked, blushing as the girl's still tired eyes looked at him. I thought I told you, but my name is Emma, she said, giving him a small smile that Naruto couldn't deny copying, though still leaving her shy touch. I'd like to meet you, Emma, but because this better forget it, he said, letting go of the subject. Asking such a silly question would be too suspicious, especially with the girl who had spent the night with him. Confused, the girl looked at who he'd been with from 6 p.m. until now. You're acting strange. You don't seem like the seductive young man I slept with a while ago. Tell me, are you really shy and just pretending for me? She asked amusedly as she leaned further into the boy, causing the sheet covering her chest to fall a little, leaving a lot of flesh visible. Well, you could say I'm a little nervous about these things, but I wasn't pretending, it's a bit difficult to explain, he said, very nervous about the situation, when Emma suddenly kissed the white-haired man, who was shocked by the suddenness of the situation. You kissed me out of surprise. It's normal for me to do the same. The embarrassed Hanagaki searched his mind for a way to resolve the situation, but he couldn't. He didn't even know how the situation started, or under what terms. A roll in the hay? Just one night? As boyfriends? Friends with benefits? She was a one-night stand that I had to pay? A mutual agreement on some specific terms? Did they even have protection? So many options but nothing concrete. Saying something out of place could make him look like a jerk or an idiot, and that was something he didn't want. Hurting a girl's feelings was very painful for him. Emma, hey Naruto. The mention of her name brought the boy out of his mind, and he saw that the girl was already wearing underwear, a blue set that looked very good on the golden girl's body. Really? Do you want something to drink? I asked with a smile, letting it be known that I was on the phone. Maybe to the hotel reception. And no, I think I'm done here, he said, trying to find his clothes with his eyes while simultaneously waiting for some kind of scream or grimace from the girl, and since she didn't, the Hanagaki was able to sigh in relief. Ugh, apparently they agreed it would be just a one-night stand. At least I can say this will end here forever, he thought as he calmly put on his clothes and ran off, leaving a confused Emma behind. Wait, Naruto, your credit card. As she peeked through the door, the blonde noticed that the Hanagaki was no longer in the hallway, which surprised her. He was really fast to get lost so quickly in that 30-meter hallway. Well, I'll give it to you later along with your phone and watch and jacket, he said, sweating slightly because the boy had also forgotten his phone, jacket, and smartwatch. Since you have the money to buy these things at such a young age, I heard these watches are very expensive, he thought, looking at the smartwatch, which could easily be a phone on its own, making calls and other things if necessary. Well, whatever, I'd better go before Mikey calls me. Elsewhere, Naruto could be seen running while trying to get away from the 4-star hotel where he was, since for him the further away he goes, the lower the chances of finding the girl again, and the easier it is for him to forget all this problem. You know what? I'm never going to make any kind of deal with you again, he said, frowning at what had happened. He hoped nothing more had happened other than what had happened recently. I'm you and I wouldn't be so sure. It's 12 at night, we made the deal before 7. He said with a grim smile, implying what Hanagaki knew he was implying. Damn, he thought, clenching his fist until he felt the shadow's hands land on his back, and he could feel a smile growing on his twisted face. Your future with Kyoko changed drastically, don't you think? With that last provocation, Naruto tried to punch the creature behind him, but instead, he felt nothing because it wasn't physical. He felt his fist slam into something completely solid, and a scream caught his attention. Oh! End of flashback. Naruto, well, I'd better tell you later, it's a bit vague, he said to the girl, who nodded, confused by the boy's refusal to share his strange event. Well, you guys have been acting really weird lately. Takemichi always changes his personality from one day to the next, and you're all shy 1 minute and all embarrassed the next. Hearing that, Naruto blushed at hearing about his little flaw. Well, honestly, if I did do something perverted with you today, I apologize, she said, and Hinata smiled nervously. Don't worry, you didn't do anything to me, but you were flirting a lot with all the girls you were looking at. It was strange for someone like you, she said, while Naruto and Takemichi's mouths dropped open in disbelief. Naruto/me flirting, both brothers said in surprise, and now Naruto was sweating profusely. He must have done something else. What girl did he flirt with? He spends all day like this with every girl he meets. Oh my god, school. Now Hanagaki was blue in the face at the memory of possibly going to school flirting. If I were to overreach with someone else, I'd probably get suspended, or worse, expelled. Takemichi, someone is calling you. With that, both brothers awoke from their respective mental worlds to hear the younger Hanagaki's cell phone ringing. Or it's Draken, he said, answering as Naruto walked to the side behind him. Oh, hello, Draken. Hello, Takemichi, tell me, are you busy? If something like that, I'm with. At the Musashi Shrine in half an hour, Mikey wants to see you there. But I'm with. Clip. After being hung up, Takemichi rolled his eyes. Sorry, Hina. I have to go. I won't be able to walk you home, he said, embarrassed. Don't worry, I'll go. He's one of your friends, right? Surprised, Takemichi nodded. I thought she'd be scared of seeing Draken and Mikey again, he thought, smiling at his girlfriend's bravery. He should be like that too. Sure, let's go, he said, but another voice behind him alerted him. Let's go. Where to? Naruto asked while eating ice cream from a medium-sized tub. Draken wants to see me at the Musashi Shrine, so Hina and I will go, he said with a drop of sweat from watching his brother continue eating. Oh, genius, I'll accompany you, he said, smiling warmly, but when he noticed Hinata's gaze through his smile, he blushed. If I don't interrupt something, of course, he said, now embarrassed. And laughing at his older brother, Takemichi shook his head. Don't worry, Mikey probably wanted to see you. He said you were strong and he'd like to meet you, he said, nervous to know what the blonde dwarf meant by strong. He's still blue from seeing his brother take on a guy like Mikey head-on and match one of his blows. Naruto is really scary when he's angry, he thought, looking at his brother's embarrassed face right now and comparing it to Jade's own a few weeks ago. Or even worse, with his face from 12 years ago. The empty white eyes scared him, as if something dark had covered his brother's blue eyes. Now that he noticed, his brother's eyes seemed paler than the last time he'd seen them. Are you sure you don't want another try? Ignoring the creature that loomed over Takemichi's shoulder, Naruto smiled at the look on his brother's face. This probably won't be the only time he'll be killed there. That won't leave you with any choice but to give me another piece of you. With that, the creature vanished again as Naruto walked a little behind the enamored couple who began to converse. Hey, Takemichi, what do you consider important? The question made Takemichi think for a moment, though he didn't have a real answer. For me, it's moments like these, where we don't have to do anything to be happy. Look, we're just walking, and I'm so excited. Seeing the interaction between the two, Naruto slowed his pace little by little, allowing the two couples to converse with each other. I hope you managed to save her, and Ai-chan. With that thought, Naruto followed behind them until they reached the Musashi Shrine, which, to the trio's confusion, was completely empty. Draken said they'd be here in half an hour, he said, looking at his watch, that it was 12:20. The call was almost 30 minutes ago, so they must have been arriving by now. What's that noise? Naruto asked, confusing his companions for not hearing anything, until a few seconds later the noise of motorcycles was heard in the distance, and when they looked in the direction of the noise, the couple opened their eyes in surprise, as hundreds of motorcycle lights approached them, making it clear where they were from. Was the Toman that big? Takemichi wondered, watching everyone approach them and arrive. The lights revealed hundreds of criminals wearing the same Toman uniform. They're really scary, the salmon-haired girl said, a little nervously, while Takemichi stood beside her. Just don't look at their faces, he said as he looked at the astonishing number of people there. Toman must be big, meaning there must be so many of them. Maybe a few hundred, or even more easily. Huh, what are you looking at, idiot? Chapter 4. Because of the scream, Naruto, Hina and Takemichi's attention was drawn to one of the criminals from Toman's gang who was approaching them along with two others who looked similar to Takemichi. Us? The blonde Hanagaki asked, noticing that the man was talking to them. Do you want to die? One of the other two asked. Scaring Takemichi and Hina with the threat, Naruto ate ice cream and watched the scene calmly. No, of course it is. It's just that we were invited here, that's why it's dash. Before he could finish, he was roughly grabbed by his clothes, lifting him slightly off the ground. Who would invite a weakling with your Kayamaza toy? The second said, and Takemichi remembered. He was one of the Toman guys who always hung out with Kayamaza, maybe from the same division. Hey, leave it alone. Violence is bad, Hinata said, worried about her boyfriend, and the gang member smiled as he listened. Violence is bad, huh? Well, we'll see how bad it is for this weakling, he said, about to hit Takemichi, but he failed as his blow was weakly deflected by Naruto's palm, which simply pushed his blow slightly out of the way of his younger brother's face. I thought Toman wanted to change the criminals or something, not just hit anyone for the hell of it, he said as he grabbed the stranger's fist, turned around to use his body as leverage and slammed it into the concrete, while giving a slight twist, twisting his wrist at an impossible angle. Because of the pain of having his wrist dislocated, the gang member let out a loud cry of pain that apparently caught the attention of a purple-haired man in the distance. While Naruto swept one of the two gang members who came together, the first one tried to attack him, and holding his arm he also smashed him on the ground. Except this one held his hand behind his back in such a way that he subdued him, and didn't let him make any movement. Hey, what's going on here? Naruto looked to the side where the purple-haired man was coming in that direction, leaving the criminal he was holding on the ground next to the first one, who was holding his hand in pain. Naruto looked at the boy approaching him, and seemingly ignoring him, looked at Takemichi beside him. Are you Hanagaki Takemichi? I asked, with a clear nod of approval that I knew, and nodding, the purple hair gave the boy a rather weak kick on the floor, who groaned in pain. What do you think they did to the commander's guest? Come, follow me, he said, leaving both of them lying on the floor, while Hina and Takemichi followed the boy to where there was a Mikey and Draken in their respective Toman uniforms, which like all the Gans had the name on one side, while on the other their ranks as commander and sub-commander, and behind the words of Buddha. In both heaven and earth, I alone am worshipped. Noticing his friend's presence, Mikey stopped looking at all the gathered delinquents and greeted the boy. Oh, take Mickey, I greeted with a smile, which Takemichi nervously copied. Hey, why did you bring your girlfriend? Draken asked, approaching the embarrassed couple. Well, I didn't know it was such a big deal. I also brought Naruto. I hope you don't mind, he said, pointing at his brother, who was tending to the criminal who twisted his hand. Stay still or I won't be able to put it back in its place, he said, focused, even though the criminal seemed to be getting scared. And without further ado, he gave his wrist a twist that resonated throughout the room as his hand returned to its original shape. There, I'm sorry about using a move like that on you, he told the criminal, who, despite glaring at him, didn't say anything, which Naruto took as an excuse to turn to his brother and his friends. I think I went too far, he said, smiling nervously. But Draken dismissed it as if it were nothing. Don't believe it, he's just crying like a baby. You twisted my arm, and I'm fine today," he said, showing his hand that he was completely fine, which reminded him of Naruto and his actions. And although less embarrassed, he still blushed a little. "Sorry about that again," he said, and Draken let him pass again. "Draken, it doesn't matter, Emma. This is Takemichi's girl, take good care of her," she said, and Naruto found the name familiar. Emma, sounds familiar, he thought, while eating ice cream, not caring about the name. Okay, gosh. Hearing the voice, Naruto stopped eating ice cream and looked at the room where it belonged to him. When he looked at her, he saw the same girl from earlier, only now dressed. Her attire was a school uniform consisting of a white shirt and a black skirt, with a coat around her waist and a much larger one on her back that Naruto was familiar with. The girl who was looking to the side turned her gaze back to the group, giving herself a little surprise. "Oh, hey, sweetie." Hearing the way the girl referred to Naruto, both Takemichi and Naruto himself opened their mouths. "Why does he call you sweetie?" Hina asked doubtfully, and the girl smiled embarrassedly, while Takemichi beside him opened his eyes. "He already has a girl, and she's so pretty," he thought with a crocodile tear at what he thought was his brother's girlfriend. "I don't understand, did you already know Emma?" Draken asked, looking at Naruto, who became even more nervous at the big guy's gaze. "Naruto, well, you see, we met this afternoon. I asked Takemichi to spend the night with me, but Naruto offered to do it instead. He was so charming and cute that I couldn't say no," she said, smiling. Meanwhile, Naruto and Takemichi now opened their mouths in surprise, while the spoon fell out of Naruto's mouth in shock. Meanwhile, behind them, Hanagaki Hina looked at her boyfriend with a less than friendly smile. And noticing this, Takemichi quickly tried to explain himself. "Hina, I assure you I don't remember anything about that. It was probably dash." Slap. "You're an idiot." Angry, the salmon-haired girl walked away, leaving Takemichi, Naruto, Draken, and Emma behind. "I don't remember anything either, to be honest," Naruto said to Draken at his side, who raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "This is stupid," she said, leaving Takemichi, Naruto, and Emma behind. Emma looked at Takemichi with a slight smile. "You tried to play along with me with a girl like that? It was idiotic. Although I liked what we did, don't get your hopes up, it was just to reach adulthood faster," she told Naruto, who was confused. "I just wanted him to feel jealous, but he doesn't even care," she whispered as she walked away, further confusing the white-haired man. Looking where the girl had been looking, he noticed Draken and Mikey smiling and understood. She wanted to make Draken jealous? He thought doubtfully, and wanting to know if that was the case, he dropped Takemichi to the ground. "Hey, and you wanted to become an adult because?" The blonde looked at the boy and smiled. "I wanted to experience what it was like to do that for the first time. It's something that would help me feel more grown up," she said, looking at her nails and stroking her hair with her hand. "I thought being more grown up, he might notice me." Naruto listened to this calmly as he followed close behind. "I'm no expert on love, but there are times when the best way to love is to not be together," he said, earning Emma's gaze. "I mean, if you can't, you can't. Sadly, the best thing in that case is to let it go." Emma smiled at this very sound advice. "You're very good at giving love advice. Have you used it?" she asked with a friendly smile. Although that same smile disappeared from Naruto's face and turned into a melancholic one. "I'm trying, but it's not that easy," he said, looking at his forearm, where a very precious gift for him must have been. "Although I notice her absence." "Did she leave you?" Emma asked, looking up at the sky as she continued along the path with Naruto at her side, searching his pockets like crazy. "Well, not in the sense of breaking up with me, because yes, I was going to travel to Paris and some places in America. Although our intention was a long-distance relationship, it was simply impossible," he said, reaching for his watch, but thinking he'd left it at home today, he continued talking. "We didn't talk much because of the time difference, and then we just stopped talking. He also hasn't responded to my last message about breaking up," he said calmly, remembering his last message from 2 months ago. "Also because it would last anywhere from 3 years to a lifetime, depending on what you want. And since I didn't want to ruin your dream, I decided it was best to leave everything up in the air. That was very nice of you," she said to the boy, smiling. "I really don't know what to do. He's really only interested in being with Mikey and the gang. He doesn't seem to have any interest in me whatsoever. He wasn't even upset that I slept with you." Naruto: "Well, this gang thing among kids these days is a dream. Everyone wants to get high and most ignore everything else, so they probably don't have time or they don't care." She said it as sincerely as she could. "How about we help each other forget them, just the two of us? You know, like that movie where two young people get together to forget their crushes." Naruto blushed a little upon hearing that. "I don't have much experience with fake boyfriends," he said, looking away, and Emma nodded. Until something reached her subway and asked, "You and her started like this, right?" she asked, thinking of that possibility, and with the boy's nod, she confirmed it. "Sorry," he said, knowing that it could be a sensitive subject for the white-haired man. Although the boy's denial calmed the girl. "It's nothing, really," he said, walking calmly. And remaining in a somewhat awkward silence, Naruto decided to speak. "Besides, in that movie, aren't the two boys breaking up because, coincidentally, their crushes were also secretly in love with them, and they also get together to forget the other two, but when they find out, the four of them split up and each goes after their true love?" Emma: "Yeah, that part was fun," she said, smiling. "Although if one day I went out with you I wouldn't mind either, but I would like it to be because I like you and not to forget her. I also hope that you don't use me." He joked while winking, something he would never really do if he were complete. And Emma smiled mockingly at the gesture. So here's that seductive boy, huh?" At that, Naruto blushed, noticing her gesture. "I'm sorry I got carried away," he said, looking to the side, embarrassed by his action. But the girl dismissed him. "Don't worry. And thanks for being so honest, you helped me. And what about dating? Do I take it seriously?" he said with a smile, asking the question playfully, but not in any way jokingly. And the Hanagaki noticed this very well. "If that's what you want, I just hope she remembers this time," Hanagaki said, amused, as he climbed a flight of stairs into the shrine, where he noticed the angry Hinata Tachibana standing above him. "Well, I think I'm leaving," he said, smiling to Emma, who, noticing Hina above him, nodded. "You should call me sometime," he said, and Naruto scratched his head. "Well, I don't have my cell phone here, so I could ask Mikey for your number." "Oh, right, I have it here," Emma said, surprising Naruto, who noticed the girl take out her cell phone, watch, and credit card. "Look, you left it behind when you ran away like a chicken," she said amusedly, as the boy blushed in embarrassment. "I'm sorry about that, but the situation seems awkward. Waking up in a room with someone I don't remember ever seeing is weird," he said, and Emma looked at him confused. "Don't you remember what happened this afternoon or last night?" I asked, and Naruto shook his head as he packed up all his belongings and put on the watch that was a gift from someone he knew. "That's strange, maybe because of the drink. You didn't seem intoxicated though," she said, while Naruto shrugged. "Possibly," he said, because it was the most believable lie for the girl. "Well, I'll leave you," he said, turning away, leaving Emma to head towards Hinata, but noticing something, he called Naruto, who turned to look. "I still have this," he said, pointing to the coat on his shoulders, and also noticing Naruto's dismissiveness. "Don't worry, I don't even know why I was wearing one. I don't feel cold," he said, turning around and heading back to where he'd left Takemichi and Mikey. Emma, who had been watching him retreat, was a little confused by what the boy had said before leaving. "I'm not cold," he thought as he dismissed the question and turned to Hina. He could possibly help her with her anger at the boy. It didn't seem right to tell her he didn't remember anything. He and his brother probably have a condition where they forget things, and that's why they both forgot their interaction with her. Or a second personality, since both seem like a drop of water compared to a drop of oil. While when she first met them, they were both cold/seductive, now they're cowardly/shy. Who knows? Chapter 5. Naruto returned to his brother, Draken, and Mikey, who seemed too serious for ordinary conversation. So, Naruto looked at Takemichi, whose cheek was purple from Hina's slap, who was still angry if he had to guess. "Oh, Takemichi's brother, I'll give it back to you." Naruto looked at the ice cream in Mikey's hands and sweat dropped. "Thanks," he said casually, taking the ice cream back and turning to look at Emma and Hina in the distance. It seemed like the conversation was moving forward. "Draken, gather everyone," Mikey spoke, looking at the blonde giant, who nodded. "Everyone, gather!" Draken shouted, causing everyone to stand firmly in front of the shrine in less than an instant. And walking through the middle left by the leaders of each division, being led by Mikey and Draken as the leaders of the entire Toman gang. And at the top, Naruto stood next to Hina, watching Takemichi walk at the end of the line. He seemed amazed, scared, and confused by how he ended up in the center of everything, something that one division didn't seem to like either. "Naruto, are you still angry?" he asked the salmon-haired girl at his side, who didn't respond directly and instead looked away from him. "I don't know what really happened, nor can I play devil's advocate and suggest a hypothetical scenario that would benefit Takemichi," he said without gaining any reaction from the Tachibana. "The only thing I can suggest is that maybe, just maybe, Takemichi wouldn't have accepted Emma's proposal even if she hadn't been there," she said, smiling a little at Hinata, who barely caught her eye. "You're so cute, Naruto. But don't defend him. It's pretty clear he'd accept. It's not like this is the first time something like this has happened." Naruto's smile fell and his eyes rolled comically white, a bead of sweat falling on the back of his head. "I thought I'd matured, but it only happens momentarily. Then he goes back to that Takemichi." Naruto was about to say something, but decided to stay silent. There was no way to defend Takemichi without leaving more questions than answers. He should just let him do it himself. Naruto stopped the conversation mid-conversation and turned his gaze to the group of leaders now at his side. Or just Mikey and Draken, along with Takemichi, since the leaders of each division were representing their division. Mikey stood in front of everyone, making any murmurs or whispers between the divisions disappear completely, gaining the attention of Takemichi and even, completely, Naruto. "Mikey, the meeting is due to the Mobius incident. If we don't confront them, the conflict will be enormous," said the one nicknamed Invincible. Naruto raised an eyebrow, the name familiar. He knew he'd heard it mentioned in some conversation almost 5 days ago, but he couldn't quite remember. A noise near his ears pulled him from his thoughts. Below the grand staircase where Mikey was, right below the edge where Naruto himself was standing with Hina, there was Takemichi, who had apparently been hit by someone, which made him stop his thoughts and try to intervene. Although he had to stop when the same purple-haired boy from before did it. Naruto watched his brother's interaction with the purple-haired boy from above, while Hina looked tired at his side. Though he didn't notice because he was preoccupied with something else. Mobius raped and beat a girl. The words hummed in his mind, knowing full well what he meant. He remembered everything perfectly, about the Mobius from where he'd seen them. "So Yamada is like this because of you?" "Yes, how cruel, right?" Naruto looked to his side and snorted. "I'm 100% sure you'd make someone do something similar if it would gain you something," he thought, looking away, still angry at what the demon must have done to his body while he was gone. What is this about creating another self, which is the opposite of him? The shadow looming over Hina shrugged. "Time isn't linear beyond what humans believe, and it has so many branches. I can tell you that it's possible," he said, a smile growing. "Futures that your brother is altering and changing little by little. That comes at a price, for him or for someone around him," he said, his eyes, which were more like infinite voids within the darkness of his form, turning alongside his figure to look at Takemichi. And suddenly, a smile spread across their faces. Something that didn't give Naruto the best impression, and a small worry crept into his mind. "Naruto, find something to do and leave him alone," he thought angrily, while the shadow didn't even seem to hear him. Although it did vanish with the wind, leaving Hina's side empty. Naruto changed his serious, cold gaze to his usual calm and embarrassed one, then noticed Hinata's tiredness. "Do you want to go? I'll go with you," he asked, looking at Hinata, who was almost asleep, and she was no different. She was the kind of student like him, a strict schedule to secure her future. It's no problem. I can wait until this is all over. Naruto, don't worry, I have nothing to do here anyway, he said as he took Hina's forearm and invited her to walk, leaving behind Takemichi and Toman's discussion about what Mobius would be. Naruto, walking calmly through the silent streets of Tokyo, looked at Hina, who seemed tired but sad at the same time. I'm a good listener, he said with a slight hint of embarrassment. Although Hina's laughter only increased the slight embarrassment she felt. Don't worry, I'll be fine tomorrow. I have so many things to do, it'll be easy to get distracted. Well, I understand that. I'll probably be totally distracted by all this tomorrow, especially because of what my day will be like, he said, already expecting the worst. And his imagination wasn't helping. He pictured a school with a crimson atmosphere and hate posters, all waiting to burn him alive or something like that. That might be too funny to be true, but it was still something he knew would happen if he had done what he thought he had done. Hina, the guardian angel, is having trouble with something? That's new. Naruto, don't call me that, it's embarrassing, he said, blushing, but then smiled. Guardian angel was a little something he gained since elementary school, since his way of being so kind and almost impossible to say no to others made him loved enough, especially along with his perfect way of doing even the unknown. He made us think when we were young that he was some kind of earth-born angel, but then the nickname stuck because he was such a good person. That nickname is what proves that, even if you're part of it, you'll never be just another one. Naruto looked up at the sky and smiled. It was the best way to face that reality. Naruto, hey Hina, where are we going? I asked, looking at the girl who blushed. I thought you were in charge, she said, and Naruto, in chibi form, rolled his eyes at her. Naruto let out a small laugh and then turned around. Come on, I'll make sure to come to your house, he said, taking the sleepy girl's hand. Hina, thank you. She smiled at the boy, who nodded, continuing on her way to the Tachibana's house. It wasn't far, as it took less than 10 minutes to walk, which felt like an eternity to the sleeping girl. They both ended up at the door of the girl's apartment. When I arrive, I take Naruto's hand and bow to him in gratitude. Thank you very much for bringing me Naruto. Okay, talk to you later, he said, entering, leaving the boy at the door, who gave his goodbye and turned around. One more. Naruto walked down the apartment stairs as he pulled out his cell phone. Upon seeing it, he noticed that his first contact was Takemichi. He hadn't responded to his message about coming to Shibuya to be a student, something that had happened 2 months ago. In second grade, I had a contact whose name was incomplete, but whose main name was Nani. And in third grade, I had another one called Ida One-san. Mom hasn't texted me all day? That's weird. Normally, she asks me how everything is going every day. He thought, looking at the last time his mother had written to him, which was right around 10 or 11 a.m. break time at the school he was currently attending. Well, maybe it's nothing, she thought, knowing she was overthinking a single issue. Ma, I should be worried about why Keisuke-san doesn't seem interested in studying for this exam, I whispered as I left the apartment complex and walked toward her house. It wasn't that far. I just had to leave the Nakano district, cross the Shinjuku side, and I'd arrive in Shibuya. The next day, the white-haired man with glasses was on his way to school. His concern that he was screwed up at school eased somewhat after running into Matsuda and not noticing anything different about her treatment of him. But the feeling that he had done something wrong remained. I hate you, she thought, with crocodile tears running down her cheeks. So much anxiety would make her hair turn gray. Nor would it make any difference whether you have one or not. Naruto, just shut up, he replied, as he made the last turn to get to school. One thing that relieved him a bit was that the school didn't have any signs denouncing him. What did worry him was noticing someone he knew walking toward him. But that concern vanished when he saw that she didn't have any hostile looks. So he didn't do anything to his sister. Which led me to greet him. Oh, Takeyomi-san. Leaving Akashi-san again? I asked, looking at an older man with a scar over one eye and black and white hair in different strands. Yeah, you know what she's like. If I didn't bring her, she'd probably stray somewhere unsuitable. Naruto nodded. I don't doubt it. When he's out of class, he's always playing around or looking for fights, he said, remembering a girl with soft pink hair arguing with someone with short, light blonde hair. Naruto heard a familiar sound and said goodbye. The bell. I'll have to leave you, Takeyomi-san. The boy ran, leaving the man named Takeyomi Akashi behind. And arriving at school, Naruto was relieved to see that it was barely the first bell and not the second, otherwise he would have ended up outside. At least I got away with it, I whisper as I walk into the school. Until they reached the hallways, where standing in the doorway was her longtime friend, Senju Akashi, or alternatively, Senju Kawaraji. A girl with light pink hair, emerald green eyes, and a common school uniform similar to hers, but in a feminine style. Akashi-san? He greeted the girl, who noticed his presence. Her eyes seemed to light up, as if a light bulb had just been exposed to electricity after years of exposure. Naruto! Between jumps, in a swift movement, the Senju was hugging the white-haired man with blue eyes in an exaggerated manner. He seemed confused, even more so. Power, the Senju was affectionate with him, but never to this exaggerated extent. They looked like a couple who had just fallen in love. And he didn't like that. Akashi-san, get down, we're going to fall, he said, feigning imbalance. This caused the pale pink-haired girl to stop hovering over him and fall happily in front of him. I miss you so much. You didn't talk to me again after you left school, she said with a pout, looking away. Naruto, why would I talk to you after school? We don't even have the connections for that. Senju nodded. That's true. But you promised you'd come back with me to you know where, she said, embarrassed, looking away. And Naruto's already worried mind showed him something he didn't want to imagine again, and it was him, a hotel and Senju. What the hell, God, tell me I didn't do that. You didn't do it. Naruto's brow furrowed at the voice he didn't want to hear. Shut your mouth! Naruto, Senju, where is that? Do you know where? More or less? Senju, seriously? I'm talking about that place we went to yesterday after skipping school, remember? Naruto turned blue. I'll refresh my memory. Senju rolled her eyes. I don't know what it's called, but I remember practically boxing there. You seriously don't remember how you beat the shit out of that big, arrogant guy? Naruto let out the biggest sigh of his life, which confused Senju to a certain extent. It was just that, I thought something else happened. Senju, anything else? What? Oh, it's Gyoko. Naruto turned around upon hearing Senju's words and pointed to his friend whom he met when he came to this school mid-year. She was his guide the first month and his friend the next. A great friend who began to love her from then on. You could say that her friendship with her was something that only happened to her sometimes. And even worse, it was a friendship that emerged so quickly. Good morning, Hanami-san. Slap. Chapter 6. Suddenly everyone heard the sound of a slap, while Naruto had a red cheek from the hit and his eyes wide open in surprise. While Kyoko, who was responsible for hitting Naruto, had her hand raised. You're trash, she said, her eyes narrowing and her brow furrowing. Everything fell silent among the group, except that most of them were already in class. It was arguably the biggest gossip in school, although thank God no one else was here. No one besides. Hey, what's wrong with you? Why are you hitting him? Senju intervened, annoyed. The girl's actions toward Naruto made no sense. They were always the best of friends, if you could call them that. Besides, what could Naruto, an angel of God, do that was so mean as to anger Kyoko, who had been closer to Naruto than usual the day before, to slap her like that without further ado? Kyoko turned her gaze to Senju, but he ignored her. I never want to see you again, she said to the surprised Naruto, who hadn't expected that. Everything had gone so well that morning that he dismissed the suspicion that he had done anything wrong the day before. But this slap made it clear that if he did something wrong, very wrong. Kyoko held her disheveled bag as she turned away from the group. Still angry, Senju was about to go to the older woman, although her hand was held by Naruto, preventing any action from the girl. And looking at Hanagaki with anger and doubt, he only gave her a smile and shook his head. I deserve it surely. Senju, but you. Naruto, don't worry, even I can do very bad things apparently, he said, looking at who was now his ex-friend walking down the large hallway. Just leave it like that, it's best for everyone. Naruto grabbed his backpack and continued on his way to his classroom, leaving Senju behind, who looked at him worriedly. What happened? Naruto heard a voice behind him, and when he turned around he saw a classmate looking at him. Keisuke-san? Naruto turned his gaze towards a boy of the same height as him. He was a boy with neatly combed black hair, who wore opaque glasses most of the time and wore the standard school uniform. He was easily 5 feet 7 inches to 5 feet 7 inches. Don't worry, it wasn't anything important, he said to the boy next to him. This Keisuke Baji, a friend he met when he arrived, was different from what he seemed at first glance. He was a bit aggressive and short-tempered, very bad at spelling, and a little less intelligent in everything else. She met him while helping him in 6th grade. Although he was a 2nd grader, 2 years out of her class, he didn't mind helping others in other classes. Baji, a girl hits you, storms off, and Senju is about to start a riot back there doesn't seem like a big deal to me. Naruto looked away. Maybe I did something really stupid yesterday. Baji, what do you mean? Naruto shrugged. That's exactly the problem. I don't know what I did that day to upset her. Baji, I'm not one to judge, so I'm just going to say wait for him to calm down and pretend I never heard this. Naruto was a drop as Baji followed the path to class and left him behind. The 2nd bell has already rung. You don't want to lose that good streak, do you? Naruto nodded. Goodbye, Keisuke-san. Naruto continued his way to his classroom, and upon entering, he saw the same old thing. Young people approaching adulthood, all between the ages of 17 and 6. It was normal. He was barely a 14-year-old boy and 2 years ahead of his peers. Young Hanagaki, punctual as always. Naruto, Takeda-sensei. Naruto greeted his teacher with a small bow, then continued on his way to his seat. Unfortunately, as always, Kyoko was sitting next to him. She didn't seem to even acknowledge his existence, which made Naruto sigh. Classes are going to be a pain. Later. Naruto was leaving school. It was his first break. So they had free time until 1 p.m., an hour at most just for him. Or so he wanted, since the sudden weight on his shoulders told him otherwise. Okay, let's go. Naruto looked at Senju with doubt on his sword. Shall we go? Senju, you promised me you'd take me to Fight Club again, she said as she got off the boy's sword, who looked at her with even more doubt than before. Meanwhile, she was practically jumping up and down with excitement, like a child receiving a birthday present. Naruto, Fight Club? Why would I take you there in the first place? Takeyomi-san entrusted me with your well-being and told me to keep you away from fights and trouble. And a fight club is just that. He spoke while rubbing the bridge of his nose, which Fanta had done while he wasn't in his body. Well, it's not a fight club. It's a gym where they practice boxing. Naruto, are you talking about the club that's a few blocks away? Senju nodded. Yes, you took me to training yesterday and promised to come back today. Naruto thought about it for a moment, and realized it was a bad idea. He thought about it again, and again, he felt it was a bad idea. But he decided to sigh and let it go. He wasn't in the mood to talk, or rather, argue all day about this promise against the Senju. Takeyomi, no, and Maoshi-sen blew my mind. He sighed, looking away. He just promised them he'd keep Senju out of any trouble, but was this a problem? For him, it wasn't. These were legal, sparring matches. Besides, what did he say about letting her fight in the first place? Come on. Naruto took Senju's hand to lead her with him, while behind them Kyoko watched his retreat with a cold gaze, which she did not leave when she turned around and retreated to the opposite side. With Naruto and Senju. Naruto arrived at the place that he recognized as where boxing practices came very constantly. He never practiced it or any similar martial art, but he did see that boxing, judo, and even king boxing were practiced here. This generated very frequent arguments, which is normal in a place where a martial arts team as dangerous as king boxing and boxing works, and a calmer one like judo. And the significance of the three forms of fighting posed even more problems, with one being about defeating and even killing the opponent, and the other about immobilizing them. This led to constant mockery and fighting. Naruto entered the place followed by the senju, and as soon as he entered, a judoka, that's what those who practice judo are called, fell to the ground with his mouth bleeding, the fault of a boxer because of his gloves, who seemed very furious if his attempt to hit the already unconscious opponent again said anything. The boxer, a young man perhaps 17 or 18 years old, with dark skin and short black hair, was very muscular, and stood about 2 meters, 10 centimeters tall. He wore a judo suit. Perhaps he wore it as a joke, since the belt around his waist was red, but not the typical red. It was formerly white, stained with blood. Senju, looks like he's still mad about yesterday. Naruto looked confused and questioningly at the girl. Do you know what's going on here? Senju, yeah? You too, you defeated him yesterday, did you forget or what? Naruto shook his head. Just recapping the situation, he said, looking at the big man who was being pulled away from the unconscious boy by a girl who seemed to be training in judo. It was a cruel fight. He's just a kid, Senju said, looking at the unconscious boy, who was a child in every sense of the word. Maximo was 12 or 13 years old, if his height were anything to go by. His physical build was far inferior to his opponent's, so this fight shouldn't even have happened. Naruto, hey Senju, does this place have a manager? I asked doubtfully. If I didn't have one or it wasn't someone older, I'd already consider it an illegal place, even if it's legal on deck. It's probably related to a bribe, or an adult opened the place and is irresponsible for leaving them alone. That was imprisonment regardless of the cases. You sissy! You'll be next. Naruto heard the scream and looked at the ring, where the giant boy, over 2 meters tall, was looking at him with anger in his black eyes. Come here, smash your face in, you idiot! Naruto, are you talking to me? Senju nodded. Yeah, the fight started precisely because I called you a passive sissy. Naruto nodded. What an unnecessary reason to start a fight, he said, looking away, disinterested. He didn't really consider himself an active person in a relationship because of his kind and calm nature, so that wouldn't bother him. But of course, his opposite self was the exact opposite of him, an active person who would be bothered by being called passive. A jerk in short. And? Naruto looked at Senju in doubt at her unanswered question. There was no one there yesterday, and there isn't anyone there today either. The girl shrugged, because it was better for her, no one to stop her from beating up those jerks. Naruto, we're leaving, he said, turning around. He knew that a little bad luck here and there, and they'd all end up in jail. And that would be a big problem for both him and his mother, and for him and Senju's siblings. I don't think that's going to be possible. Naruto looked up, where the door was closed by a boy he knew. Masayaki-san? Naruto looked at the brown-haired boy he'd known a long time ago, a friend from his old school in Kyoto. His friendship, along with that of the 3 other friends from the same school, had been broken long ago by a small truth. Although only he knew that his friendship was broken. Hanagaki, I greeted with a smile. It's nice to see you, though unfortunately I can't let you out. Let's just say you angered Kokujin because of what happened yesterday, and that's not going to be solved with a small allowance, he said, smiling at the end. Naruto's gaze darkened as he remembered the reason for stopping being friends. Money. They were only with them for the money their family had. Masayaki, get out of the way, Naruto said as he raised his eyes, which were no longer the embarrassed and innocent ones they had always been, but now held anger within them. Even he could feel it, he always suppressed it and gave a smile, and eventually the anger would pass. But seeing the mockery of someone she considered a friend for most of her youth, coupled with what happened today with her former friend, didn't let her process and bottle up that anger any longer. Let's think about it. No. Her face went from thoughtful to mocking in a second. And Naruto, thinking about acting, took a step. Although he instantly stopped, as he felt, saw, and heard several simultaneous movements with his own behind him, and that told him everything. If he attacks, he'll start a fight with a large group all by himself. The problem? Senju was with him here, and that could end in a hurt Senju, the same as problems with his brothers, and the problem in his hurt Senju something he didn't want. I just have to fight, right? I asked, and his old friend nodded. Good, he said as he took off his glasses, handed them to Senju, and stepped into the ring behind him. His crimson-tinged blue eyes shone brightly. Let's fight. Chapter 7. Takemichi could be seen at a fast food restaurant, where he was seemingly hiding, occasionally glancing off into the distance, where Mikey and Draken were sitting. This is unforgivable. Takemichi stopped looking at his menu and turned to Draken and Mikey. Is this what started your argument? Mikey, they didn't put the flag on it. Takemichi was left speechless by that. I only ordered the kids' menu because it has a flag on it. Toman's leader told the waiter, pouting. Draken, here, Mikey, take your little flag. The blonde giant placed a small flag from his coat, making the little blonde boy smile with happiness. Thank you, Kenshin. I speak happily. A few moments later, Takemichi was still sitting in the distance, staring straight ahead, waiting for something to happen, and that would be the case all day. He was already keeping an eye on Draken to see what problem could have caused him to argue with Mikey. And that's precisely what the misfortune of August 3rd would bring, the fight with Mobius. You've got me fed up. Takemichi's attention once again fell on the group of them waiting for an argument, although the next thing left him even more blank. You look like an old man sleeping after eating, Draken said, looking at Mikey, who was sleeping on the sofa at the fast food restaurant. Really? He thought, watching Draken carry the almost asleep Mikey on his back. Leaving through the back door, Draken walked past Takemichi, who covered himself with the menu in his hands. Apparently it worked, as the giant walked past him without looking at him. Waiting a few seconds, Takemichi stood up and walked slowly out, looking around. He managed to spot Draken turning a corner, walking toward a familiar place nearby, the hospital in Shibuya. Takemichi started running to keep track of Draken, and as he turned the corner, Draken was already in the distance, turning right again and disappearing. At this rate, he'll either spot me or lose me. The blonde with the horrible hairstyle continued on his way to the nearest hospital, where Draken stopped for a few moments. Mikey, we're here. Draken stirred slightly, causing the sleeping blonde dwarf to raise his head in a daze. The hospital? What are we doing here? Mikey dropped his head again as Draken entered the hospital. As a person with dull Russian hair walked by, both of them ignored him. The friend's girlfriend, Pachin. And Naruto? Mikey looked in a window where a girl was lying in a hospital room, badly beaten and apparently in a coma. And beside her, Naruto, who had blood stains on his white shirt, was sitting next to the girl. Why did you bring me? Draken was about to speak, but a scream caught his attention. What are you doing here? Mikey, huh? Both young men turned around to look at an elderly man with black hair, opaque glasses, and a look that screamed anger. My daughter is in that state because of someone like you. Draken looked at the man and lowered his head, slightly confusing Mikey and Takemichi, who were hiding around the corner, listening to the silence. Don't lower your head, Kenshin. Besides, why is this old man talking to us like that? People like you are nothing but scum! He shouted, making Naruto, inside the room, notice what was happening outside. You go out and cause trouble every night, you fight and hurt others. And you think you can get away with it because you're underage kids like you just discussed me. Honey, stop. The woman next to the man tried to stop the angry father, but this did not work at all. Mikey was visibly angered by the old man's words, but before he could do anything, Draken held his head. Hey, what are you doing? Let me go. Keep quiet, Draken said, his head bowed. What good does it do my daughter if two good-for-nothings keep their heads down? Draken didn't react, still holding Mikey's head down. As she was a good girl, she never did anything to anyone. Because she got hit. Tears soon began to flow, and the atmosphere plummeted again, leaving everyone silent. Neither Draken, Mikey, nor Takemichi said anything, while the girl's parents wept. Valence, don't come back. Both adults left the hallway, while Draken and Mikey remained in that position for a few more seconds. We're going to fight Mobius, Draken began. But we have to remember that there are people around us. We can't let those people, or the people around those people, end up harmed by our decisions. You don't have to lower your head if you don't want to, you just have to remember these words. Mikey, thanks Kenshin, I don't know what I'd do without you. Both young men raised their heads as they turned around. You know, I'm hungry, Mikey said casually. As they crossed, Takemichi hid around the corner, and again, he wasn't seen by either of them as they turned around the other way. Takemichi looked at both of them goodbye with a serious face. He could now understand why Mikey ended up the way he did in the future, and why Toman in 12 years was such a cruel gang. Draken was like Mikey's heart, supporting him in his shortcomings and helping him stay sane. Without Draken, Mikey just wasn't the same. I knew it. What did you know? From the shock of the situation, Takemichi tried to run extremely far. Even with a hand holding his white shirt with red sleeves, he couldn't move even a millimeter. Naruto, who was holding his brother, let go, causing him to fall. Hey Naruto! What are you doing here? I'm paying someone a visit here. Takemichi noticed Naruto's gaze toward the camera and knew his brother's reason for being there. But I'm asking myself the same question. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in class? Takemichi stood there hesitantly. School, that's right, I still have to go to school, he thought, surprised. He'd forgotten that, especially since he'd only just returned from the future and was so focused on protecting Draken that he'd forgotten everything else. Well, I couldn't go today because… Naruto turned his head in doubt, waiting for an answer from Takemichi. Takemichi didn't seem to have anything to say, and Naruto knew this, so he saved his younger brother himself. Why did Draken and Mikey-san leave without you? You came with them? Takemichi shook his head. We came our separate ways, he said more calmly. Naruto nodded. Well, I have to go now. Where's Senju? He wondered as he was about to turn around, but Takemichi stopped him. Hey Naruto! Why is there blood on your shirt? Did you get in a fight with someone or something? Did they hurt you? When was that? Is that the reason you're in the hospital too? Takemichi couldn't continue when Naruto's hand fell on his head, and he shook his head. It's not mine. Even though you'll look like the nurse when you arrive, apparently it's pretty common these days for kids to get hurt, he said, a little blushing as he remembered the nurse's concern as she looked at him. So how did you get that blood then? Naruto was stuck remembering that. Well, that was it. Flashback. Naruto, let's fight, he said, but a call made him turn around when a pair of gloves fell into his hands from the Masayaki. Why boxing gloves? He asked doubtfully. If he was going to fight, it would have to be bare knuckle or with king boxing gloves, since the boxing gloves would make it difficult for him to maneuver with his hands. Both will fight on equal terms, with boxing. Naruto frowned. I've never practiced it. Masayaki just shrugged. There's always a first time, he said mockingly. Everyone noticed something yesterday in Naruto and Kokujin's fight. Naruto was somewhat fast, and his kicks were almost impossible to see. They were instantaneous, and no one reacted to them beyond a simple flash before being received by Kokujin's giant. All of that, coupled with his constant kicking and speed, made everyone say Hanagaki was a karateka, and yes, indeed. His upper body was less well-maintained than his lower body, a common trait among karate practitioners, so that meant he was better at attacking with his legs. He was losing the battle. Naruto frowned but shook his head. Fine. He sighed, putting on his gloves, and after fitting the right one snugly between his teeth, he looked at the Kokujin in front of him. Any unfair blow will result in a final defeat. The words came from a boy with a tattoo on the right side of his face that Naruto didn't recognize and didn't make an effort to. Naruto, break his face! Senju shouted excitedly. Naruto's sweat dropped and looked at his small, restless companion. You're not helping the situation, Senju. The girl smiled. Thank you? The white-haired man shook his head. Let's finish this, he said, positioning himself with both arms in front of him, his body half sideways, 1 foot further back than the other. Aside from a few short jumps, this was the only thing he could say he knew about this martial art. Noob steps, but better than an amateur's, he thought, frowning. He didn't know much about boxing, as evidenced by the fact that he had the wrong arm up. But if he did know some basics, that was already a problem. It doesn't matter, I just have to crush it, he said, quickly launching himself at Naruto and preparing a punch. It went straight to Naruto's face, who blocked it with his glove, while the same Kokujin tried to deliver a left jab. But he missed, which the white-haired man took advantage of to step aside and move to the right. The size difference is a problem in this, Naruto whispered, looking at the 2.10-meter giant, taller than Draken, who was 1.90 meters tall. It's harder to hit something high with your hands than with your feet, this will be a big problem, he thought, knowing that the moment the boy charged toward him, one kick could have ended the entire battle like nothing had happened. Well, it's best to do it smart, he thought as he took the initiative, throwing a punch that nearly hit the dark-skinned boy's jaw. Although he was able to move away and throw a punch that Naruto dodged by moving to the side. He then dodged a series of blows again, throwing his head back into the sides, almost getting hit. This caused him to finally decide to move away. Naruto frowned, wondering what he could do. Even annoyed, the boy seemed to be on his guard, so a move like a jump could be a bad move at this point. His thoughts turned to the previous day and the little he knew about what had happened. He decided what to do and smiled. Senju, he called out to the girl without turning around. How long did this fight last yesterday? Senju was confused. 1-2 minutes? You were mostly playing and fainting, so I couldn't tell. I wasted time in the fight. Naruto nodded. How long has it been since I started? Senju, counting the conversation, maximum 45 seconds. Naruto nodded, then smiled confidently as he put on a defensive stance. Those 15 seconds will be enough to finish this. His words of confidence ended up making him want to, rekindling his opponent's heated hatred for him. He launched into a furious attack, forcing Naruto to block every blow and retreat. Moving to the other side of the ring, he was quickly caught by the black-haired giant, who landed a direct hit. Although Naruto ducked, the angry boy raised his foot to kick him. Before that could happen, Naruto took advantage of his concentration on kicking him and jumped, landing above his opponent. Charging the blow, in an instant that no one could see, a powerful punch landed on Kokujin's face. The boy's blood flew and landed on Naruto's clothes, while his mouthguard only served to break the giant's teeth. He fell backward to the ground, unconscious, or possibly worse than that. Naruto took off his gloves and dropped them to the ground. Then I looked around, waiting for something specific, but no one moved. Everyone around him seemed surprised, perhaps because Kokujin, due to his size and strength, had an advantage over everyone else here. He was like the king of the place, if the fact that he could hit a child and not receive any kind of intervention said anything. Naruto took one last look at the place, where on the wall a t-shirt with a dragon in black was woven between two initials, B and D. The inactive black dragon? They'd been doing nothing for about 3 months, so for many, yes, the 10th generation must have ended. And being here said it had to be like this, or something similar. No one has any opinions? He asked, looking at the place where everyone else had remained silent. Good. Stepping out of the ring, Naruto left the unconscious boy, who was treated by the short-haired girl from earlier. And taking her hand, Naruto left the place with Senju. He passed by the silent Masayaki, who didn't even speak to him, just as he hadn't. Neither of them had anything to say to each other. After all, they weren't friends. Don't come here again, especially not alone, she said to Senju as they walked away together, passing a brown-haired girl who was walking beside a light gray-haired boy. Senju, you must teach me how to fight like this. Naruto shook his head. Takeyomi-san would never kill me. He wants you to stay away from these things. Senju, so why did you bring me if you think the same as them? she asked with her arms crossed, while Naruto looked away embarrassed. It's a question I asked myself too, he whispered angrily. Senju, you're just like them, they think I'm a little girl who needs protection just because I got beaten up 5 years ago. Naruto shrugged. This isn't my decision, and I'm not going to help you behind your brother's back, he said, turning around. Let's go to school, he said to the girl, who shook her head. It's still early, why don't we do something else? Senju suggested, hoping to persuade the boy to go and have some more fun. Naruto thought about it for a moment. Let's go to the hospital. I want to see someone, he said, causing Senju's expression to fall. After that, I'll take you wherever you want. Did you try? Deal. Chapter 8. Naruto, that's the reason why I have blood. Takemichi looked at Naruto in amazement. You fought someone that tall? The blue-eyed blonde's surprise was evident, causing his brother to feel embarrassed. Wow, Naruto is amazing. I didn't remember him like this. He even seems less embarrassed than I remembered. His eyes aren't as dark as they used to be, and his attitude seems more free-spirited. Takemichi's thoughts stopped when a voice behind him called out. Senpai! I've brought the bubble coffee! Both Hanagakis turned around, whereas Senju was arriving with 2 drinks in each hand. She took a sip from the one in her right hand every so often. Senju! Naruto greeted the girl as he took the drink. Thank you? Takemichi got confused between Naruto and Senju. Oh, right. Senju, this is my younger brother, Takemichi. Takemichi, this is Senju. I'm pretty sure I told you about her once. The 2 boys looked at each other. Hi, I'm Senju Akashi. Senpai always talks about his little brother. He says you're very rebellious and grumpy, but that seems like a lie. Naruto, well, there is a reason, that is, but it is private, I think. Senju nodded. Well, I am Takemichi Hanagaki. Naruto, okay, we have to get back to school, he said, looking at the watch in his hand. Why aren't you at school? Senju pointed at Takemichi, who grew nervous at the subject being brought up again. He'll be out today, don't worry. Naruto held Senju's hand. Goodbye, Takemichi. We'll talk later. Naruto left the hospital, with Senju at his side. Do we have time? Naruto shook his head. We've already done so much today, let's just go to class, he said, guiding the girl. Although she seemed to get angry if her pout said anything. Senju, aren't you going to keep your promise? You're a liar. Okay. I'll take you to do some things on the way out. I'll be sure to explain to Takeyomi-san why you'll be late. Senju became noticeably excited at this, and Naruto smiled at her, knowing this would cheer her up and stop any tantrums she might throw on the way back. While both boy and girl walked away, Takemichi looked at the duo from behind. Naruto really seems very close to that girl, almost as if they were. Hanagaki shook his head. His brother was too good to trick someone like that. A few minutes later, Naruto was together with Senju walking back to school. Some time later. A few days had passed since everything happened, and Naruto was sitting in his classroom, staring out the window, bored. Since Takemichi started hanging out with Toman, his worries had only increased instead of diminishing. Being a criminal is becoming very famous, just as being a hitman was in the past. Although it had been over a year since things in this world calmed down, Naruto knew the dangers were still there. It was only a matter of time before everything exploded, and I didn't want Takemichi at the center of it. The midday bell rang, and without even waiting a second, Naruto grabbed his backpack and left the classroom. He wasn't planning on talking to Senju today, both because he wanted to be with his brother and because the girl would somehow find a way to get him to take her somewhere dangerous. And Takemichi had already threatened him definitively for what happened a few days ago. I liked the beating we gave him. Naruto arranged his backpack more comfortably and left the school, heading to find his younger brother. Knowing Takemichi, he was probably with Awaken at the Mirochi shop in the Shibuya district. No? It seems like he just left. Do you know where he went? Naruto asked his younger brother's red-headed friend, who shrugged. I think he went to Shibuya. If I'm not mistaken, the abandoned warehouse is where Mikey and Draken will meet today. Naruto sighed. At least he knew he was with Mikey and Draken, though that didn't make him any better, even though he owed it to himself. No matter how strong they were, in this world, that usually put those around them in much greater danger. Naruto thanked the boy as he ran off to the distant warehouse. That place was on the border of Shibuya and Shinjuku, so it was quite common for one of both gangs to take it over. Naruto suddenly opened the shop door again, walked calmly to the counter, and placed an order. 15 Mirochi, Ichigo to Kurama flavor. And 4 more, Buruburi flavor. He asked quietly. And upon receiving the order, he ran off again, leaving Akin sweating. Takemichi's brother is weird, he thought, going back to eating. Elsewhere, Naruto could be seen running all over the Shibuya district. Since this was a very populated district, cars weren't very common, aside from taxis, of which there were a considerable number. Why so worried? That Mikey can block and even take one of our hits. He could take care of the idiot for a few minutes. True. Naruto, there is a limit to how much someone can do alone. He left the district center, and a few minutes after running, his vision took in the place, and what he feared became reality. Behind Mikey and Draken's supposed meeting, there was a large group of people in gang outfits. Only they weren't Toman, even by the color, and what he could see. Naruto knew or had an idea which gang they were, and he didn't like it. Oh, this is more interesting. Naruto walked down the hill and saw how many young people were entering this place that he knew had his brother, and that worried him. Without waiting a second, he ran, entering the abandoned warehouse and seeing a scene that surprised him. Takemichi. In front of Naruto, Takemichi was about to be stabbed by an older boy than Draken easily. Everyone realized what was about to happen, and Draken stepped in the man's way with a broken bottle. And without waiting any longer, Naruto was already at Draken's side. And in an instant, a kick to the face from the giant, blonde boy made him, with no plans of falling, drop the bottle and fall unconscious. Only Naruto's foot was there for support, and he unexpectedly pulled it away. And with that, the leader of the other gang fell on Draken's shoulder in surprise. Wasn't he at the door a moment ago? Naruto, Takemichi, are you okay? Oh God, your nose is bleeding. Naruto instantly approached his brother, checking and noticing the bleeding in his nose and the swelling in his eye. In addition to the possible accumulated blood, and the blood in his head. I'm fine, Naruto, just, how did you know I'd be here? Naruto smiled. God, this isn't the time for such silly things, don't worry about it. Naruto smiled at him, and then hugged him. I'm glad you're okay, don't get involved in this stuff. And if you do, at least call me, he said, walking away, staring at Takemichi. How surprised he nodded. Why yes, he said, surprised. Since when is Naruto so talkative? Takemichi looked at his brother. He was never that talkative, and rarely told him this. He always cared, but he was somewhat more shy and quiet. Now he seemed to be more precise and fixed with his words. Hey, are those Mirochi over there? Naruto turned to look at Mikey. Well, yeah. They were for Takemichi. I found Akin and brought some back, he said, giving them to Takemichi, who then gave one to Mikey. Kenshin, do you want one? The big guy, who was still holding the Mobius leader, turned his eyes to Mikey. I already told you not to call me that. Arg. Draken fell as the scream of the person he was holding came out, and he looked down, where a fatter blonde boy had stabbed the Mobius leader. Dichin, what the hell did you do? Moving the name Pachin away from the leader of Mobius. Osanai, don't close your eyes for a devil. Naruto was instantly at Osanai's side, taking off his school shirt. Don't remove the weapon, it will only increase the bleeding and cause hemorrhage. Naruto tore open his jacket and placed it across the wound to secure the weapon. The white-haired man was about to stand up, but at that moment, a familiar sound alerted everyone. Is that a patrol car? Draken cursed. Right now, this is bad. We need to go, quickly. Everyone followed the order of the giant sub-captain of Toman and left. You can go, I'll stay here. Naruto smiled at Draken. He reassures Takemichi. It seems like a couplet, he said while still holding the Mobius leader's wound. Draken nodded and decided to run. Pachin, what are you waiting for? Let's go! Draken stopped when he saw Mikey yelling at Pachin, who remained standing still. Meanwhile, everyone from Mobius and Toman were already outside, leaving only Mikey, Naruto, Osanai, Draken, and Pachin. I'm going to turn myself in, Draken. Everyone was stunned by that. Hey, what the hell are you talking about? Mikey stopped in front of Pachin. This isn't the time to be good. If the police catch you, you'll go to jail. The boy didn't seem to react, even with a bloody nose. His gaze was completely determined. Draken, take care of Mikey, he said to the giant, who looked at him, unsure how to react. Although he had to grab Mikey and run when he heard the sound of the police again. And even with all the invincible sudden movements, Draken kept running. Under the watchful eye of Pachin, who was watching his retreat. This is for Hosayama-san, Naruto asked without looking at the boy beside him. Pachin didn't seem to react either. So it's her boyfriend Abanea. Naruto looked at the boy, who looked back at him. If Osanai dies, you'll be in there until you're an adult. Between 15 and 20 years, if you behave well, you'll get a minimum of 12. He said, looking at the unconscious Osanai on the ground. But if he lives alone, you'll be charged with attempted murder and carrying a knife. That's 3 years. Turning yourself in will reduce it to 2 years, and knowing what Osanai did might reduce it to 1. But that's a hypothesis. Naruto heard the warehouse door open, and knew who it was. I didn't understand what you said, but I know you're trying to help me. I'm grateful. The boy looked at Naruto, who looked back. Naruto smiled. I'll make sure you're back with Mikey soon, don't worry. Pachin, Hanagaki, I guess. Naruto nodded. Your brother seems to be very attached to Mikey, so for me. Ask him to take care of him while I'm gone. Naruto nodded. I'll make sure of that, he said, his thoughts running through his mind. Hey, Pachin, if they ask? Tell them it was self-defense and keep quiet afterward, that's my advice, he said, and the Toman boy nodded. I don't know what that is. But I'll listen, Senior Hanagaki. At that moment the front gates were opened, and the local police entered. Quickly Pachin was arrested and Naruto interrogated, not omitting anything of what little he knew. Naruto spoke. When I arrived, Osanai was about to attack my younger brother, Hanagaki Takemichi, with that broken bottle. So, Naruto paused for a second, considering whether to say it or not. But he smiled. I had promised. In Osanai's rage, the young man over there stabbed him less than 5 minutes ago, he said, smiling, as he watched the captain of Toman's 5th Division being taken away, arrested, and on a stretcher. Osanai was on his way to the nearest hospital. Although Naruto had a doubt, they were over an hour away from Shinjuku. So that ambulance couldn't have arrived in these last few minutes where Pachin was caught. That means someone called the ambulance, and possibly the police. I knew a lot of guys in red suits were attracting attention, but not enough to call the police. So someone was behind this, or maybe an adult saw all those guys coming in and was cautious. Well, that's all? The officer asked, and Naruto nodded. Good, you're free, kid. The officer stopped taking notes and walked away, and Naruto did the same.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.